There is a moment many people know too well. You send a message and then stare at the screen, waiting. You show up early, stay late, give more than you get, hoping someone will finally notice how much you are worth. And when they don't, something inside you quietly shrinks. If this feels familiar, you are not alone, and more importantly, you are not broken. You have simply been taught the wrong way to measure your own value. This audiobook is going to challenge almost everything you have been told about attention, approval, and worth. You are going to learn why chasing people who ignore you keeps you stuck, why walking away can be the strongest thing you ever do, and why the need for constant validation is quietly draining your energy every single day. You will hear practical steps you can start using today, not vague ideas but real actions that change how you think, speak, and carry yourself in every room you walk into. By the end of this journey, you will understand something that high-value people already know deep in their bones. Your worth was never something to prove, beg for, or chase. It was always something to build, protect, and live from. Stay with me through these next 10 chapters, because somewhere in this journey, you are going to recognize yourself, and you are going to walk away seeing your own value in a way you have never seen it before. Chapter 1. Discover why your value never depends on others' approval. There is a moment that happens to almost everyone, usually more than once in life, when you realize you have been waiting for someone to notice you, waiting for someone to text back, waiting for approval, a compliment, a nod, a sign that you matter. And in that waiting, something inside you shrinks. You become smaller than you actually are. You start shaping your words, your choices, even your personality around what you think will make someone else finally see your worth. This chapter exists to interrupt that pattern. It exists to remind you, clearly and permanently, that your value was never something another person could give you, and because of that, it was never something they could take away either. Most people spend years, sometimes decades, tying their sense of worth to external validation. They wait for the promotion to feel successful. They wait for the relationship to feel loved. They wait for the applause to feel talented. This is a trap, and it is one of the oldest traps in human experience. The ancient Stoics understood this centuries ago. They taught that true strength comes from within, from what a person can control, and that chasing things outside yourself, especially the opinions of others, leads only to anxiety and disappointment. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire, still wrote privately to himself about the danger of caring too much what others thought. If an emperor with unlimited power and resources still had to remind himself of this daily, imagine how much more important it is for the rest of us. Here is the truth you need to accept today. People are inconsistent. Their moods change, their attention shifts. Their priorities are shaped by their own struggles, insecurities, and distractions, most of which have nothing to do with you. If your value depends on their approval, then your value will rise and fall based on things you cannot control. One day someone praises you, and you feel like you matter. The next day they ignore you, and you feel like you are nothing. This is not living, this is emotional gambling, and the house always wins. Think about a candle. A candle does not dim itself because someone in the room refuses to look at it. It burns exactly the same whether one person is watching or no one is watching at all. Its light is not created by attention. Its light exists because of what it is made of. You are the same. Your worth is not created by attention. It exists because of who you are, what you carry inside you, and what you choose to build with your life. The moment you understand this, you stop performing for an audience and start living for yourself. Now, understanding this intellectually is easy. Living it daily is the real work. So here is where we get practical. The first step is recognizing the specific moments when you seek approval instead of acting from your own values. Pay attention this week to how often you check your phone for a reply. Notice how often you rehearse a sentence in your head before saying it, not because you believe it, but because you want it to be liked. Notice how often you agree with something you do not actually believe, simply to avoid disapproval. These small moments are where your power leaks out. You cannot fix a pattern you refuse to see, so the first discipline is awareness without judgment. Just observe. Do not criticize yourself for it. Simply notice. The second step is learning to separate your identity from your results. This is one of the most freeing shifts a person can make. Your value as a human being is not the same as your performance on a given day. If you have a bad meeting at work, that does not make you a failure. If someone does not respond to your message, that does not make you unlovable. If your business struggles for a season, that does not make you worthless. Results move up and down constantly. If you attach your identity to results, your identity will constantly be under attack. Instead, attach your identity to your effort, your integrity, and your discipline, things that remain steady no matter what happens outside of you. The third step is building what I call an internal scoreboard. Most people live by an external scoreboard, one that is judged by likes, comments, promotions, and praise. High-value people build an internal scoreboard instead. Every night, ask yourself 3 questions. Did I act with honesty today? Did I put in real effort today? Did I treat myself and others with respect today? If the answer is yes, you had a successful day, regardless of what anyone else thought about you. This single habit, done consistently, rewires your brain to measure success by your own standards, instead of the changing opinions of others. The fourth step is practicing what the Stoics called the discipline of indifference to things outside your control. This does not mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop needing their approval in order to feel okay. There is a difference between caring about someone and depending on them for your identity. You can love people deeply, respect their opinions, and still not need their approval to know your own worth. In fact, the less you need approval, the more genuine your relationships become, because you are no longer performing. You are simply being yourself, and the people who value the real you will stay, while the ones who only valued your performance will fall away. Let them. Let's talk about a real example, because ideas without application remain just ideas. Think of someone who works incredibly hard on a project, pouring hours into something they believe in, only to have a co-worker or boss dismiss it without a second thought. The old pattern is to spiral, to think, maybe I am not good enough, maybe my work does not matter, maybe I should have done it differently to please them. But a person who understands their own value responds differently. They ask themselves honestly, did I do my best work with the information I had? If the answer is yes, they hold their head up, because their worth was never dependent on that one person's reaction. They use the feedback if it is useful, and they release the rest, because criticism is information, not identity. Here is another example. Imagine someone who has been in a relationship where they constantly feel like they are trying to prove they deserve love. They check their partner's mood before speaking. They apologize excessively. They shrink their opinions to avoid conflict. This is not love. This is fear wearing the mask of love. A person who knows their worth does not need to earn basic respect and kindness. They offer love freely, but they do not beg for it. If a relationship requires you to constantly prove you are worthy of decent treatment, that relationship is teaching you the wrong lesson about yourself, and walking away from it, though painful, is often the doorway to rediscovering your own value. This brings us to something important. Knowing your value does not mean becoming cold, arrogant, or detached from people. It means becoming secure enough that you do not need external proof of your worth to function, to create, to love, or to lead. Secure people are often the warmest people because they are not guarding themselves out of fear. They are not competing for attention. They give generously because they are not empty inside, waiting to be filled by someone else's opinion. So how do you build this security day by day? Start with your morning. Before you check your phone, before you check messages or notifications, spend even 2 minutes reminding yourself of your own standards for the day. Not your mood, not your circumstances, your standards. What kind of person do you want to be today, regardless of what happens? This simple practice trains your mind to lead with your values instead of reacting to outside stimulation. Next, practice saying no without over-explaining yourself. Many people over-explain because they are seeking approval for their decision, hoping the other person will agree and validate them. A person who knows their worth can say no clearly and kindly, without needing the other person to approve of that no. Try this the next time someone asks you for something you do not want to do. Simply say, "I appreciate you asking, but that does not work for me." No lengthy justification needed. Watch how uncomfortable this feels the first few times, and understand that discomfort is simply the sign that you are growing beyond old patterns. Also, learn to sit with silence after you speak. Many people fill silence with anxious chatter because they are terrified the silence means disapproval. Silence does not mean disapproval. Silence is often simply silence. Practice speaking your truth and then allowing quiet to exist without rushing to fix it or explain it further. This builds enormous inner steadiness over time. Finally, and most importantly, keep a private record of moments where you honored your own values, even when it was difficult. Write them down. The time you told the truth, even though a lie would have been easier. The time you walked away from a conversation that disrespected you. The time you kept working on your goal, even though no one clapped for you. This record becomes proof, not from others, but from yourself, that your worth is real, consistent, and something you built with your own hands. Understand this clearly before you move forward in this book. Every chapter after this one depends on the foundation you build here. You cannot set boundaries in chapter 6 if you still believe your worth depends on someone else's opinion. You cannot walk away with dignity in chapter 4 if you are terrified of losing approval. Everything in this journey toward becoming high value begins with this one decision. Your worth is not up for debate. It is not something you earn through performance. It is something you already carry, simply by being alive, by trying, by growing, by choosing to keep going even when it is hard. From this moment forward, stop auditioning for people who have not even decided if they want to watch the show. Stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never built to hold your full presence. Stop waiting for permission to value yourself. You do not need it. You never did. Your value was never in their hands. It was always, and will always be, in yours. Carry that truth into everything you do next, and let it become the quiet, steady confidence that guides every decision you make from here on out. Chapter 2. Build unshakable self-worth from the inside out. Real self-worth does not arrive by accident. It is not something you stumble into after a good week, a nice comment, or a small win. It is something you build, brick by brick, in the quiet moments when no one is watching and nothing is being rewarded. Most people think confidence comes first and action follows. The truth is the opposite. Action comes first, small and consistent, and confidence follows as the natural result. This chapter is about laying those bricks correctly, so what you build actually holds weight when life tests it. Picture two houses. One is built on sand, the other on solid rock. The house on sand looks fine on a calm day. It even looks impressive from the outside. But the first real storm exposes everything. It shifts, cracks, and eventually collapses. The house on rock experiences the same storm, yet it stands. The difference was never visible on the surface. The difference was in the foundation, laid long before the storm ever arrived. Self-worth works exactly the same way. If your worth is built on things outside yourself, compliments, likes, promotions, or someone else's mood, it will collapse the moment life gets difficult. If your worth is built on your own actions, your own integrity, and your own effort, it holds steady, no matter what storm arrives. So how do you actually build this kind of foundation? It starts with something simple but often ignored, keeping promises to yourself. Think about how you feel when someone constantly breaks their word to you. Over time, you stop trusting them. You stop believing what they say because their actions never match it. Now think about how you treat yourself. How many times have you told yourself you would wake up early and hit snooze instead? How many times have you said you would start the project, the workout, the difficult conversation, and then quietly let it slide? Every time this happens, you are teaching your own mind not to trust you. This is where a lot of low self-worth actually comes from. It is not that you are not talented or capable, it is that you do not yet trust yourself, because you have broken too many promises to the one person who is always listening, you. This means the real work of self-worth begins with small, boring, unglamorous consistency. Choose one thing today. It does not need to be big. It could be making your bed, drinking water first thing in the morning, or writing 3 sentences in a journal before bed. Choose something small enough that you cannot talk yourself out of it, and then do it every single day without exception, not because the task itself is life-changing, but because every time you follow through, you send your brain a quiet message, I keep my word to myself. Do this for 30 days and something remarkable happens. You stop needing outside proof of your worth, because you are collecting proof from your own actions daily. Another key piece of building unshakable self-worth is learning to separate your worth from your mistakes. Many people carry old failures like heavy stones in their pockets, replaying them constantly, letting a moment from years ago define who they still believe themselves to be. But a mistake is an event, not an identity. You are not your worst decision. You are not the version of yourself that existed during your lowest moment. Every single day gives you a new opportunity to act differently, and it is through those daily choices, not old failures, that your true character is actually built. Stoic philosophy teaches that we should judge ourselves the same way we judge time itself, moving forward, never frozen in the past. The past can inform your decisions, but it should never imprison your identity. There is also a deeper layer to this, and it involves how you speak to yourself when no one else can hear it. Pay attention this week to your internal dialogue. Would you speak to a friend the way you speak to yourself when you make a mistake? Would you call a friend lazy, stupid, or worthless for missing one workout or messing up one presentation? Probably not. Yet many people say exactly these words internally, without a second thought. This inner voice matters more than almost anything else, because it runs in the background of every decision you make. Start correcting it deliberately. When you catch a harsh internal comment, pause and rewrite it the way you would speak to someone you respect. Instead of, I always mess things up, try, that did not go the way I wanted, and here is what I will adjust next time. This is not about being soft on yourself. It is about being accurate. Harsh self-talk does not create discipline, it creates shame, and shame rarely produces lasting change. Respect produces lasting change. Physical discipline also plays a bigger role in self-worth than most people realize. There is a strange, powerful connection between how you treat your body and how much you trust yourself. When you exercise consistently, eat with intention, and get proper rest, you are sending a message to your subconscious that you are worth taking care of. This is not about achieving a certain appearance for other people to admire. It is about proving to yourself, through daily physical action, that your well-being matters enough to protect. Start small here too. A 10-minute walk, a glass of water before coffee, going to bed 20 minutes earlier. These actions seem minor, but they compound into a deep, quiet sense of self-respect that no external achievement can replicate. Boundaries also play an enormous role in this foundation, and we will explore them fully later in this book. But it is worth mentioning now. Every time you allow someone to disrespect you without saying anything, you teach yourself that your comfort does not matter. Every time you speak up calmly and firmly for your own needs, even in a small way, you reinforce the belief that you are worth defending. This does not require anger or conflict. It can be as simple as saying, I need a little time to think about that before I answer, instead of agreeing to something instantly out of fear of disappointing someone. Unshakable self-worth is not the absence of doubt. Even the most grounded, capable people experience moments of insecurity. The difference is that they do not let a passing feeling of doubt override the evidence they have built through consistent action. When your worth is rooted in daily discipline instead of daily emotion, a bad day does not destroy your identity because you have proof, real proof, built over time, that you are someone who follows through, someone who respects themselves, and someone who keeps growing regardless of circumstances. Start today. Choose one small promise to yourself and keep it without exception. Correct one harsh thought and replace it with an accurate one. Take one small action that tells your body and mind that you matter. These are the bricks. Lay them daily, and over time, you will find yourself standing on a foundation that no storm, no criticism, and no rejection can shake loose. Chapter 3. Stop chasing people who refuse to choose you. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from chasing someone who has already made their decision about you, even if they have never said it out loud. It is different from physical tiredness. It shows up in your chest, in the way you check your phone for the 100th time, in the way you replay a conversation looking for a clue you might have missed. This exhaustion has a cause, and the cause is simple. You are spending your energy trying to convince someone to choose you, when the truth is, choosing does not require convincing. Real choice is immediate. It does not need to be earned through extra effort, extra patience, or extra proof of your worth. Think about how you choose the things you actually want in life. When you are hungry and you see food you love, you do not need someone to talk you into eating it. When you find a song you love, you do not need convincing to play it again. Desire moves quickly and naturally toward what it wants. People are the same. When someone genuinely wants you in their life, whether as a friend, a partner, or a business connection, they show it through consistent action, not through hesitation that you have to manage and interpret. If you find yourself constantly explaining your worth to someone, hoping they will finally see it, you are not building a connection. You are performing an audition for a role that may never be offered. Here is something that needs to be said clearly. Chasing someone does not make you look devoted. It makes you look available at any cost, and availability at any cost lowers value. It does not raise it. Think about anything valuable in the world, a piece of art, a rare opportunity, a skilled professional. Their value increases specifically because they are not desperate for attention. People who are secure in their own worth do not lower themselves to be chosen. They simply live fully, and the right people are drawn toward that fullness naturally, without being begged. Let's talk about why this pattern happens in the first place, because understanding the root makes it easier to break. Many people were taught, sometimes without realizing it, that love and attention must be earned through effort. Maybe as a child, affection felt inconsistent, so extra performance seemed like the way to secure it. Maybe an early relationship rewarded chasing with occasional attention, creating a pattern where inconsistency actually felt exciting instead of alarming. Whatever the origin, the pattern usually sounds the same in the mind. If I just try a little harder, if I am a little more patient, if I give a little more, they will finally see how much I am worth. This thought feels noble. It feels like loyalty. In reality, it is often self-abandonment dressed up as devotion. Here is a practical way to recognize when you have crossed from healthy effort into chasing. Healthy effort feels calm. It does not create anxiety in your chest when you send a message. It does not involve checking someone's online status repeatedly. It does not require you to shrink your personality, agree with things you do not believe, or abandon your own plans just to stay available in case they reach out. Chasing, on the other hand, feels like tension. It involves overthinking every text, adjusting your schedule around a maybe, and feeling a small wave of relief only when they finally respond, followed shortly by anxiety about the next silence. If your interactions with someone consistently produce this cycle, you are not pursuing connection. You are pursuing relief from anxiety that they created in the first place. So what do you do instead? The first step is brutally simple, though not easy. Stop initiating with people who do not reciprocate. This does not require a dramatic conversation or a public statement. It simply requires quiet observation. Look at the actual pattern, not the potential you imagine, not the good moments you remember, but the actual, current pattern of effort. If you are consistently the one reaching out, planning, and following up, stop for 2 weeks and observe what happens. Do not test them to punish them. Observe simply to gather honest information. If the connection was mutual, they will notice your absence and close the gap themselves. If it was one-sided, the silence will confirm what you already suspected, but were afraid to accept. The second step is redirecting the energy you were spending on chasing into building your own life. This is not a distraction technique, it is a genuine shift in priority. Every hour spent wondering why someone has not responded is an hour not spent on your goals, your health, your friendships, or your own growth. Redirect that energy into something that builds you, a skill, a project, a workout, a conversation with someone who already shows up for you consistently. Over time, this creates a life so full and engaged that chasing simply becomes unappealing, not because you are punishing yourself into discipline, but because your attention naturally moves toward things that give back. The third step involves changing how you interpret mixed signals. Many people spend enormous energy trying to decode confusing behavior, hoping that with enough analysis, the confusion will resolve into clarity. Here is the clarity you are searching for. Confusing behavior is the answer. If someone consistently sends mixed signals, the message is not hidden, it is simply inconsistent, and inconsistency itself tells you everything you need to know about how much effort they are willing to invest. People who want you do not require decoding. Stop treating uncertainty as a puzzle to solve and start treating it as information already given. There is also a deeper truth worth sitting with here. When you stop chasing people who refuse to choose you, you are not giving up on love, friendship, or connection. You are refusing to accept a counterfeit version of it. Real connection does not require you to shrink, beg, or prove yourself repeatedly. It simply exists, mutual and steady, without needing constant maintenance through your desperation. Letting go of chasing does not close the door to connection. It clears space for the version that was actually available to you all along, the version that does not require convincing. This week, notice one relationship or situation where you have been putting in more effort than you are receiving. Do not confront it dramatically. Simply stop initiating for a short period and pay attention to what happens. Whatever you learn, trust it completely, because actions over time reveal truth far more reliably than words ever could. Redirect your energy toward becoming someone so full of purpose and self-respect that chasing becomes something your old self used to do, not something your new self needs anymore. Chapter 4. Master the art of walking away with dignity. There is a specific kind of strength that most people never get to witness in themselves, because they never actually walk away from what is hurting them. They stay in jobs that drain them, relationships that diminish them, and friendships that cost more than they give, simply because leaving feels like failure. This chapter exists to correct that belief permanently. Walking away is not failure. It is one of the clearest signs of self-respect a person can demonstrate, and doing it with dignity, without bitterness, without dramatics, without needing the other person to understand or approve, is a skill that changes the entire trajectory of a life. Most people misunderstand what dignity actually looks like when leaving a situation. They think dignity means staying calm while quietly hating the other person, or leaving with a long explanation designed to make sure the other party feels guilty. That is not dignity. That is control disguised as composure. True dignity in walking away means leaving cleanly, without needing to win the final argument, without needing the last word, and without needing the other person to agree that your decision was justified. Dignity does not require an audience, and it does not require validation. It simply requires that you act according to your own values, regardless of how the other person reacts. Consider why walking away feels so difficult for most people. Often, it is not really about the job, the relationship, or the friendship itself. It is about identity. Many people have quietly built part of their identity around being loyal, being patient, or being the person who never gives up. Walking away can feel like betraying that identity, even when staying is clearly causing harm. Here is an important distinction to hold on to. Loyalty to something that is destroying you is not virtue, it is self-neglect wearing a noble costume. Real loyalty to yourself sometimes requires disloyalty to a situation that no longer deserves your commitment. There is also fear involved, and it deserves to be named honestly. Fear of the unknown often keeps people trapped in the known, even when the known is painful. A familiar unhappiness can feel safer than an unfamiliar uncertainty, simply because it is predictable. But predictability is not the same as well-being. Just because you know exactly how a bad situation will hurt you tomorrow does not make it safer than stepping into uncertainty where growth is actually possible. Ask yourself honestly, am I staying because this is genuinely good for me, or am I staying because leaving is unfamiliar and frightening? These are two very different reasons, and only one of them deserves to keep you where you are. Let's talk about what walking away with dignity actually looks like in practice, because the theory means nothing without application. First, dignity means deciding internally before you decide externally. Before you say anything to anyone else, sit with yourself honestly and clarify your own reasons. Write them down if it helps. This is not about building a case to convince someone else. It is about becoming completely clear with yourself, so that when you do leave, you are not swayed by guilt, manipulation, or last-minute promises that history has already shown will not hold. A person who is clear internally cannot be talked out of their own truth. Second, dignity means communicating simply, without over-explaining. Many people feel the need to justify their departure in extensive detail, hoping the explanation will soften the blow or earn understanding. But the truth is, some people will never understand, no matter how thoroughly you explain, because understanding was never really the obstacle. If you owe someone an explanation, offer it briefly, honestly, and calmly, then allow silence to exist afterward, without rushing to fill it with additional justification. Something as simple as, "This is no longer working for me, and I have decided to move on," is complete. It does not require 10 more sentences defending its validity. Third, dignity means refusing to burn everything down on your way out. There is a strong temptation, especially after prolonged frustration, to leave loudly, to say every harsh thing that has been building up, to make sure the other person feels the full weight of what they did. This might feel satisfying for a moment, but it rarely feels satisfying afterward. Leaving with dignity means protecting your own character, even in the final moments of a difficult situation. You can be honest without being cruel. You can be firm without being vicious. The way you leave says more about who you are than the way you arrived, so choose an exit that you can look back on with respect for yourself, not one you have to explain away later. Fourth, and this is crucial, dignity means not waiting for the other person's blessing to move forward. Many people delay leaving a job, relationship, or friendship because they are secretly hoping the other party will finally validate their decision, will finally say, "You are right to go," or will finally show enough change to make leaving unnecessary. Waiting for this permission can keep you stuck for years. The truth is, you do not need someone's approval to remove yourself from a situation that no longer serves you. Their agreement is not a requirement for your freedom. Here is something that Stoic philosophy teaches beautifully on this subject. We do not control other people's reactions, their opinions of our choices, or how they choose to remember us after we leave. What we control is our own conduct, our own integrity, and our own peace during the process. Focus entirely on what you can control. Let go completely of trying to manage how the other person will feel about your decision. Their emotional reaction is their responsibility to process, not yours to prevent. There is also grief involved in walking away, even from situations that were clearly harmful, and this deserves acknowledgement rather than denial. It is possible to know a decision is right and still feel sadness about it. Walking away from a friendship that has run its course, a relationship that has become unhealthy, or a job that no longer fits who you are becoming, often involves mourning what once was or what you hoped it could become. Allow yourself this grief without shame. Dignity does not mean feeling nothing. It means feeling everything honestly, while still choosing to act according to your values. This week, think of one situation in your life that you already know, deep down, you need to walk away from. Notice the fear that arises immediately, and notice the excuses that follow closely behind it. Do not act impulsively, but begin the internal work of clarity. Write down your real reasons. Sit with the discomfort of uncertainty rather than avoiding it through familiar pain. When the moment comes to leave, whether that is today or months from now, remember that dignity is not loud, dramatic, or seeking approval. It is quiet, clear, and rooted entirely in respect for yourself, regardless of who understands your choice and who does not. Chapter 5. Create daily habits that reflect your true worth. Every single day, you are casting a vote for the kind of person you believe you are. Not through your intentions, not through the version of yourself you imagine in your head, but through the small, repeated actions you take when no one is grading you. Your habits are not just things you do. They are proof, collected daily, of what you actually believe you deserve. If you want to know what someone truly values, do not listen to what they say. Watch what they do at 6 in the morning, at the end of a long day, and in the moments when motivation has completely disappeared. That is where real worth is either built or quietly dismantled. Most people wait to feel worthy before they start acting like it. They think, once I lose the weight, once I get the job, once I fix this one thing, then I will start treating myself well. This order is backwards, and it keeps people stuck for years. The truth is the opposite. You do not build habits because you already feel worthy. You build worth because you consistently choose habits that treat yourself as someone valuable, even on the days you do not feel that way at all. Worth is not the starting point of discipline, it is the result of it. Think about how you would treat someone you deeply respected if they were staying in your home for a week. You would make sure they had good meals. You would give them a comfortable place to rest. You would speak to them kindly and make time for their needs. Now ask yourself honestly, do you treat yourself this way, or do you treat yourself like an afterthought, surviving on convenience, exhaustion, and self-neglect, while reserving your best care for everyone else? Many people are incredibly generous toward others and shockingly careless toward themselves. Rebuilding daily habits around your worth starts with closing that gap. Let's get specific, because vague inspiration does not create change, structure does. The first habit worth examining is how you start your morning. The first 30 minutes after waking often set the emotional tone for the entire day, yet most people spend those minutes reaching immediately for a phone, absorbing other people's opinions, other people's crises, and other people's curated lives before they have even had a chance to check in with their own mind. Instead, try this. Before touching your phone, take 5 minutes to simply sit, breathe, and mentally prepare for the day ahead. This is not about elaborate rituals or expensive routines. It is about giving yourself the first moments of the day before giving them away to everyone else. The second habit involves movement, and this is not about achieving a certain appearance. It is about proving something to your own mind through your body. When you move your body consistently, even something as simple as a 15-minute walk, you are sending a direct message to your subconscious that you consider yourself worth maintaining. Skipping this repeatedly does the opposite. It teaches your mind that your physical well-being is optional, something to be prioritized only when convenient. Choose a form of movement you can sustain, not one built for short-term intensity, and treat it as a non-negotiable appointment with yourself, the same way you would treat an important meeting with someone you respect. The third habit is protecting your environment, specifically what you consume mentally throughout the day. This includes the media you watch, the conversations you engage in, and the people whose energy you allow close to you. High-value habits are not only about actions, they are also about filtration. Every piece of content you consume either adds to your clarity or adds to your noise. Begin auditing this consciously. If a certain show, account, or conversation consistently leaves you feeling anxious, inadequate, or drained, that is valuable information, not something to ignore out of habit or comfort. The fourth habit centers on completion. Many people scatter their energy across dozens of unfinished tasks, and this creates a subtle but constant background feeling of failure, even when the person is actually quite capable. Choose one task each day, even a small one, and commit to finishing it completely before moving to the next thing. This might mean fully cleaning one space, instead of tidying 5 rooms halfway. It might mean finishing 1 focused hour of work instead of switching between 6 unfinished projects. Completion builds momentum, and momentum builds the quiet confidence that comes from seeing your own follow-through in action. The 5th habit is rest, and this deserves far more respect than most people give it. Rest is often treated as a reward earned only after exhaustion, rather than a requirement built into a life of real value. Going to bed at a consistent time, allowing your mind actual downtime without constant stimulation, and giving yourself permission to stop working before you are completely depleted are not signs of laziness. They are signs that you understand your own limits and respect them, rather than pushing past them out of guilt or fear of falling behind. Here is something crucial to understand about building these habits. Consistency does not require intensity. Most people abandon new habits because they start with an unsustainable version, waking up at 4 in the morning, exercising for 2 hours, overhauling their entire diet overnight, and burning out within 2 weeks. High-value habits are built through sustainable repetition, not dramatic bursts followed by collapse. Choose the smallest version of each habit you can realistically maintain for months, not days, and build from there gradually. There will be days when none of this feels natural, when old patterns pull you back toward neglect, distraction, or old comforts. This is normal, and it does not erase your progress. What matters is not perfect execution. It is the speed at which you return to your standards after a slip. A single missed day does not define your worth. Giving up entirely because of one missed day does far more damage than the missed day itself ever could. Start today with 1 habit, not 5. Choose the one that feels most overdue in your life, whether that is protecting your mornings, moving your body, guarding your mental environment, finishing what you start, or genuinely resting. Build it slowly, without needing perfection, and let it become proof, collected daily, that you already believe you are worth the effort. Worth is not something you wait to feel, it is something you demonstrate, quietly and consistently, through the life you choose to build one ordinary day at a time. Chapter 6. Set boundaries that protect your peace and power. A boundary is not a wall built to keep people out. It is a fence built around something valuable, marking clearly where your responsibility ends and someone else's begins. Most people misunderstand this completely. They think setting boundaries makes them harsh, selfish, or difficult to deal with. In reality, the absence of boundaries is what creates resentment, exhaustion, and the slow erosion of a person's identity. If you have ever felt completely drained after spending time with certain people, or found yourself agreeing to things you did not want to do simply to avoid conflict, you have already experienced what happens when boundaries are missing. Let's clear up a common misunderstanding right away. A boundary is not something you impose on another person's behavior. You cannot control how someone treats you, what they say, or how they react. What a boundary actually controls is your own response, your own access, and your own participation. A real boundary sounds less like, "You need to stop doing that," and more like, "If that continues, here is what I will do differently." This distinction matters enormously because trying to control someone else's actions leads to frustration, while controlling your own response leads to genuine power. Consider why so many people struggle to set boundaries in the first place. Often it traces back to a deep, unspoken fear that saying no will result in abandonment, conflict, or being labeled as difficult. Many people were raised in environments where keeping the peace was rewarded and asserting needs was treated as trouble. This creates a lasting pattern where a person will sacrifice their own comfort repeatedly just to maintain harmony on the surface, even while resentment builds quietly underneath. Recognizing this pattern in yourself is the first real step toward changing it, because you cannot set a boundary you do not yet realize you need. Here is a practical way to identify where your boundaries are currently missing. Pay attention this week to moments of resentment, because resentment is one of the clearest signals available. Every time you feel that tight, frustrated feeling after agreeing to something, after staying too long in a draining conversation, or after allowing someone to speak to you disrespectfully, take note. Resentment is not just an emotion to suppress, it is data. It is your own mind telling you, clearly and specifically, exactly where a boundary needs to be built. Once you have identified where a boundary is needed, the next step is learning how to communicate it without over-explaining or apologizing excessively. Many people, when finally attempting to set a boundary, undo its power immediately by drowning it in nervous justification. Instead of a clear statement, they offer 5 reasons, 3 apologies, and a promise to make it up somehow. This does not communicate a boundary, it communicates uncertainty, and people, consciously or not, tend to push against uncertainty. Practice stating your boundary simply. I am not able to take that on right now. I need this evening to myself. I am not comfortable discussing that. Let the sentence stand complete, without needing to defend its legitimacy through lengthy explanation. It is also important to expect discomfort when you begin setting boundaries, especially with people who have grown used to you having none. This discomfort does not mean you are doing something wrong. It usually means you are doing something right, something unfamiliar to a relationship that previously ran on your unlimited availability. Some people will adjust and respect the new boundary once they realize you are serious. Others will push back, test the limits, or express frustration that you are no longer as accommodating as before. This reaction often reveals which relationships were built on mutual respect and which were built on your willingness to constantly give more than you received. There is also a quieter form of boundary that deserves attention, the boundary you set with yourself. This includes protecting your time from unnecessary distraction, protecting your energy from overcommitting, and protecting your peace from constantly checking on situations that do not require your involvement. Many people are excellent at recognizing when others cross a line, yet completely unaware of how often they cross their own limits, staying up too late scrolling, saying yes to obligations that exhaust them, or checking messages that they know will upset them. A boundary with yourself might sound like, I will not check work messages after 8 in the evening, or I will not discuss this topic when I am already emotionally exhausted. These internal boundaries are just as important as the ones you communicate to others, because they protect the relationship you have with yourself. Boundaries also require consistency to hold any real weight. A boundary stated once and then abandoned, the moment someone becomes upset, teaches people that your limits are negotiable through pressure or guilt. This does not mean boundaries should be rigid or cruel. It means they should be followed through calmly and consistently, even when the other person reacts with disappointment. If you say you need space and then immediately respond the moment someone expresses frustration about it, you have not actually set a boundary. You have simply delayed the same pattern by a few minutes. Understand something important here. Setting boundaries will occasionally cost you relationships, and this needs to be said honestly rather than softened. Some people are only comfortable with you as long as you remain endlessly available, endlessly agreeable, and endlessly willing to absorb whatever they bring to the relationship. When you introduce boundaries, some of these relationships will not survive the change, and this is not a failure on your part. It is simply revealing what the relationship was actually built on. Real connection can withstand boundaries. Connection that depends on your lack of boundaries was never fully sustainable to begin with. There is enormous peace waiting on the other side of this discomfort. Once boundaries become a normal part of how you operate, life becomes noticeably lighter. You stop dreading certain phone calls. You stop rehearsing excuses to avoid people who drain you. You stop performing constant availability out of fear of disappointing others. Your energy becomes yours again, available for the people and goals that genuinely deserve it, rather than being distributed automatically to anyone who simply asks for it. Begin this week by identifying one specific area of your life where resentment has been quietly building. It might be a person, a habit, or an obligation that consistently costs you more than it gives. Choose one clear, simple boundary to introduce, and practice stating it without excessive justification. Expect discomfort, both from yourself and possibly from others. and understand that this discomfort is simply the price of reclaiming space that was always meant to be yours. Boundaries are not barriers against connection. They are the very structure that makes real peace and lasting power possible. Chapter 7. Attract respect by raising your own standards. People do not respect you because you ask them to. They do not respect you because you explain your worth in detail or remind them of everything you have done for them. Respect is not requested, it is reflected. It is a mirror that shows people exactly how you treat yourself. If you consistently accept less than you deserve, tolerate behavior that disrespects you, and settle for mediocrity in your own life, you are quietly teaching everyone around you that this treatment is acceptable. Raise your own standards, and something remarkable happens. The people around you either rise to meet them, or they remove themselves from your life entirely. Either outcome moves you forward. Let's begin with a truth that many people avoid facing. The way others treat you is often a direct reflection of what you have shown them is acceptable, not necessarily what you deserve. This is not about blaming yourself for someone else's poor behavior. It is about recognizing your own power in the situation. If you consistently accept late responses, broken promises, disrespectful comments, or being treated as an afterthought, and you continue showing up the same way regardless, you are confirming to the other person, through your actions, that this treatment costs them nothing. People learn how to treat you based on what you tolerate, not based on what you silently wish were different. Raising your standards does not mean becoming demanding, difficult, or impossible to please. It means becoming clear, specifically clear, about what you will and will not accept, and then actually following through when those standards are tested. Many people claim they have high standards, yet their actions consistently prove otherwise. They say they will not tolerate disrespect, yet they stay in relationships full of it. They say they value punctuality, yet they continue making plans with people who are chronically late without any consequence. Standards that exist only in your thoughts and never in your actions are not standards at all. They are simply preferences you have not yet enforced. Here is where real change begins, and it starts internally before it ever shows up externally. Ask yourself honestly, in what areas of my life have I quietly lowered my expectations just to avoid conflict or disappointment? This might show up in romantic relationships, where you have accepted inconsistent effort because at least some attention feels better than none. It might show up in friendships, where you consistently initiate plans and receive little in return, yet continue as if this imbalance does not bother you. It might show up in your career, where you have accepted being overlooked repeatedly because speaking up feels riskier than staying quiet. Identifying these specific areas is uncomfortable, but necessary, because you cannot raise a standard you have not clearly named. Once you have identified where your standards have slipped, the next step is deciding what the new standard actually looks like in practical terms. Vague intentions like, "I deserve better," rarely create change because they lack specificity. Instead, define it clearly. I will not continue conversations with people who consistently speak to me with contempt. I will not make plans repeatedly with someone who cancels without genuine reason more than once. I will not accept being paid less than my actual contribution warrants without at least having the conversation to address it. Specificity turns a wish into an actual standard you can recognize and enforce in real time. Raising your standards will inevitably require you to become comfortable with disappointing certain people, at least temporarily. This is one of the most difficult parts of this entire process, because many people equate someone's disappointment with their own failure. This is simply not true. When you stop accepting behavior you previously tolerated, some people will be upset, not because you have done something wrong, but because your new standard requires more effort from them than your old, lower standard did. Their frustration is not evidence that you are being unreasonable. It is often evidence that your previous flexibility was benefiting them more than it was benefiting you. There is also an important internal component to raising your standards that goes beyond how others treat you, and this involves how you treat yourself daily. Respect from others is difficult to sustain if you do not first demonstrate self-respect through your own actions. This means examining your own habits honestly. Are you speaking to yourself the way you would speak to someone you deeply respected? Are you following through on commitments you make to yourself the same way you expect others to follow through with you? Are you presenting yourself, in your work and your daily life, in a way that reflects genuine care and effort? Or are you consistently accepting mediocrity from yourself while expecting excellence from everyone else? Respect from others often follows respect you have already established internally. Let's talk about how this plays out practically in real situations, because abstract standards mean little without application. Imagine someone consistently texts back after several days, offers vague plans that rarely materialize, and shows minimal effort in maintaining the relationship. The old pattern might involve accepting this as simply their personality, adjusting your own expectations downward to match their inconsistency, and continuing to reach out regardless. A raised standard looks different. It might mean matching their effort rather than exceeding it, addressing the pattern directly and calmly if the relationship matters enough to you, or accepting that this connection may simply not be one you continue actively investing in. None of these responses require anger. They simply require alignment between your stated standards and your actual behavior. Another practical example involves professional environments. Imagine consistently being assigned additional responsibilities without additional recognition or compensation, and continuing to accept this silently out of fear of seeming ungrateful. A raised standard here does not necessarily mean an aggressive confrontation. It means having a clear, calm conversation about your contributions and your expectations, and being willing to explore other opportunities if that conversation consistently goes unanswered. This is not entitlement. It is simply refusing to confirm through your continued silence that your effort is worth nothing beyond what you are currently receiving. Here is something crucial to understand before moving forward. Raising your standards is not about becoming cold, distant, or impossible to reach. It is about becoming selective, intentional, and consistent, rather than endlessly accommodating out of fear or habit. High standards, communicated calmly and enforced consistently, tend to attract people who are drawn to clarity and self-respect, while repelling those who were only comfortable around your previous lack of boundaries. This filtering process, while occasionally lonely in the short term, ultimately creates space for relationships and opportunities built on genuine mutual respect rather than convenient tolerance. Begin this week by choosing one specific area where your standards have quietly slipped below what you actually deserve. Define clearly what the new standard looks like in practical terms, not vague hope, but specific, recognizable behavior. Prepare yourself for some initial discomfort, both your own and possibly from others, as this new standard gets tested. Trust that this discomfort is simply the cost of finally aligning your external world with the respect you have decided to give yourself internally. And know that every time you hold this line, you are teaching everyone around you, without needing a single argument, exactly how you expect to be treated from now on. Chapter 8. Silence the need for constant validation from others. There is a quiet, exhausting habit that many people carry without ever naming it directly. The habit of checking with the outside world before allowing themselves to feel good about anything. A finished project does not feel complete until someone comments on it. A new haircut does not feel good until someone notices it. A decision does not feel correct until someone else agrees with it. This constant checking, this need for outside confirmation before an internal feeling is allowed to settle, quietly drains a person's energy and hands enormous power to people who often are not even paying close attention. Validation itself is not the problem. Humans are social creatures, and genuine encouragement from people who care about us serves a real purpose. The problem begins when validation shifts from something pleasant to something necessary, when a compliment becomes fuel you cannot function without, and its absence feels like evidence that something is wrong with you. This shift usually happens gradually, without much awareness, until one day you notice that your mood for the entire day depends on how many people responded to something you posted, or whether a specific person acknowledged something you worked hard on. Consider how this shows up in daily life, often in ways so normal they go unquestioned. posting something online and refreshing repeatedly to check the response, sending a message and feeling a specific kind of anxious tension until a reply arrives, making a decision and immediately needing to describe it to several people, not to gather useful perspective, but to receive reassurance that it was the right choice. Dressing a certain way specifically to generate a reaction rather than because it genuinely reflects personal taste. None of these actions are inherently wrong on their own. The concern arises when they become compulsive, when the checking itself feels urgent rather than optional. Here is something important to understand about where this pattern originates. Seeking validation is rarely about vanity. Underneath it is usually a quiet form of self-doubt, a lingering uncertainty about whether your own perception of yourself can be trusted without outside confirmation. If you are not sure whether your work is good, you look for others to confirm it. If you are not sure whether you are likable, you look for signs of approval to settle the uncertainty. Validation seeking is essentially outsourcing a judgment that you do not yet trust yourself to make internally. This means the real solution is not simply reducing how often you seek approval, it is building the internal trust that makes external approval unnecessary in the first place. One of the most practical ways to begin this shift is learning to sit with an accomplishment privately before sharing it with anyone. The next time you complete something you are proud of, whether it is finishing a project, reaching a fitness goal, or handling a difficult situation well, resist the immediate urge to tell someone or post about it right away. Instead, take a few minutes, even just 5, to privately acknowledge it to yourself. Notice how this feels. For many people, this feels strangely uncomfortable at first, almost incomplete, because they have trained themselves to believe an accomplishment only becomes real once someone else witnesses it. Practicing this private acknowledgement repeatedly rebuilds the connection between your effort and your own satisfaction without requiring an audience. Another useful practice involves examining your relationship with social media honestly, without shame, simply with clarity. Notice how you feel in the moments right after posting something. Is there a subtle anxiety, a checking impulse, a mood that shifts based on numbers you cannot control? If so, experiment with posting occasionally without checking the response for several hours, or even not checking at all. This is not about rejecting social media entirely. It is about breaking the automatic link between sharing something and needing immediate external confirmation of its value. There is also a specific pattern worth addressing directly: the habit of fishing for compliments through self-deprecating comments, saying things like, "I look terrible today," or "I probably did a bad job on this," often is not genuine self-criticism. It is an indirect request for someone to contradict you and offer reassurance. This pattern might feel harmless, even like a joke, but it reinforces a cycle where your sense of adequacy depends on someone else correcting your own negative statement about yourself. Practice catching this pattern and replacing it with either genuine, private self-assessment or simply staying quiet rather than fishing for a reassuring response. Decision-making is another area heavily affected by validation seeking, and it deserves specific attention. Many people cannot make even minor decisions without consulting several other people first, not because those people have relevant expertise, but because the consultation itself provides temporary relief from uncertainty. Over time, this weakens your own decision-making muscle significantly. Start practicing small, low-stakes decisions entirely on your own, without mentioning them to anyone until after they are made. What to order at a restaurant, what to wear for an ordinary day, how to spend a free afternoon. These decisions matter less for their outcome and more for what they teach you, that you are capable of trusting your own judgment without requiring outside confirmation first. It is also worth addressing directly how this relates to relationships specifically. Constantly needing your partner, friends, or family to reassure you of their feelings, repeatedly asking if they are upset with you, or needing frequent confirmation that you are valued, often creates exhaustion in the relationship itself, even when the other person cares about you deeply. This is not a suggestion to stop communicating your needs. Clear communication remains essential. It is a distinction between healthy reassurance during a specific difficult moment and constant, generalized reassurance seeking that no amount of response ever seems to fully satisfy. If reassurance from others never actually settles the anxiety for long, the issue is not a lack of enough validation, it is an internal uncertainty that no external response can permanently resolve. Silence, in this context, does not mean suppressing your need for connection or pretending you do not care what anyone thinks. It means becoming someone whose sense of self does not collapse or wobble every time approval is delayed or withheld. It means noticing the urge to seek confirmation and choosing, deliberately, to pause before acting on it. Over time, this pause becomes shorter and less necessary, because the internal foundation being built throughout this entire book, the self-worth, the standards, the boundaries, begins to hold steady on its own, without needing constant external reinforcement to remain standing. Begin this week by noticing, without judgment, every moment you feel the pull towards seeking validation. Notice it when refreshing a notification, when fishing for a compliment, when needing agreement before trusting a decision. Simply observe these moments as they happen. Awareness alone begins loosening the grip of a pattern that has likely operated automatically for years. Then choose one small practice from this chapter, sitting privately with an accomplishment, delaying a social media check, making one decision entirely on your own, and apply it consistently. This is how the need for constant validation gets quieter, not through forceful suppression, but through the patient, repeated experience of proving to yourself that your own judgment is enough. Chapter 9. Transform rejection into fuel for personal growth. Rejection has a way of arriving uninvited and settling in as if it plans to stay forever. A job application that goes nowhere, a relationship that ends without the closure you wanted, a friend group that quietly moves on without you. In these moments it feels personal, permanent, and proof of some deep inadequacy hiding underneath the surface of your life. But rejection is rarely a verdict on your worth. Most of the time, it is simply a redirection, a closed door that, however painful in the moment, is clearing space for something more aligned to eventually walk through. The first shift required here is understanding what rejection actually measures, and just as importantly, what it does not measure. Rejection measures fit, timing, circumstance, and sometimes simply someone else's limited capacity or vision in that specific moment. It does not measure your inherent value as a person. A publisher rejecting a manuscript does not mean the writing lacks value. It might mean that particular publisher was not the right match, or the timing did not align with what they were looking for that season. A person ending a relationship does not mean you are unlovable. It might mean your paths, needs, or timing simply did not align, regardless of effort from either side. Separating rejection from identity is the single most important mental shift required to transform pain into growth. Consider how differently two people can respond to the exact same rejection. One person receives a rejection and immediately concludes, "This proves I am not good enough," and this conclusion quietly shapes their next attempt, filling it with hesitation, self-doubt, and diminished effort. Another person receives the identical rejection and asks a completely different question: what can this specific situation teach me that makes my next attempt stronger? Same event, entirely different outcome, determined not by the rejection itself, but by the internal story constructed around it afterward. This is where a valuable Stoic principle becomes essential. We do not control external events, we control our judgment about those events. Rejection itself is neutral, an occurrence, a fact. The suffering that follows is created almost entirely by the interpretation layered on top of it. This does not mean pretending rejection does not hurt. Denying pain is not strength, it is avoidance. It means allowing the pain to exist honestly, while refusing to let a single event define your entire narrative about your own worth or capability. Let's talk about practical steps for actually transforming rejection once it happens, because insight alone rarely changes behavior without structure to support it. The first step is allowing yourself a defined period of genuine disappointment without immediately forcing positivity onto the situation. Suppressing pain does not remove it, it simply delays it, often making it resurface later in more disruptive ways. Give yourself an honest window, a day, a weekend, whatever feels appropriate to the situation, to feel the disappointment fully. Cry if that is what your body needs. Talk to someone you trust. Sit with the discomfort rather than rushing past it. After this window, the second step becomes extracting the actual lesson, separate from the emotional sting. This requires a specific kind of honest reflection. Ask yourself, was there anything within my control that I could genuinely learn from here, separate from things that were never mine to control in the first place? If a job interview did not go well, perhaps there is real insight about preparation, communication, or presentation that will serve future opportunities. If a relationship ended, perhaps there is insight about communication patterns or personal needs that were not being met. Insight that serves your growth regardless of how the other person behaved. The goal here is not self-blame. It is honest extraction of useful information from a painful event, treating rejection as raw data rather than a personal indictment. The third step involves reframing rejection specifically as filtering rather than failure. Every rejection removes an option that was not actually meant for you, clearing space, whether you can see it yet or not, for something that fits better. This is not empty positivity, it is a practical truth, borne out repeatedly in real life. Countless successful people can point to a rejection early in their journey. A job they did not get, a relationship that ended, a project that fell through, that later revealed itself as necessary redirection towards something considerably better suited to who they were becoming. You may not see the redirection clearly in the moment. Sometimes it takes months or years to become visible, but trusting the pattern allows you to move forward without becoming paralyzed by every closed door along the way. Here is a specific practice worth adopting immediately. Keep what could be called a redirection record, a simple written log of past rejections and what eventually followed them. Look back honestly at moments in your own life when something you desperately wanted did not happen, and trace what actually unfolded afterward. Many people, when they do this exercise honestly, discover a consistent pattern that several of their current sources of genuine happiness only became possible because an earlier door closed first. This record becomes tangible evidence, built from your own life rather than borrowed inspiration, that closed doors have repeatedly redirected you towards something valuable before. It is also worth directly addressing repeated rejection, situations where the same type of disappointment happens multiple times, whether in dating, career applications, or creative pursuits. Repeated rejection in the same area deserves a slightly different response than a single instance. Rather than concluding something is fundamentally wrong with you, get specifically curious about patterns. Are there adjustable factors, approach, preparation, communication that appear consistently across these rejections? This is not about harsh self-criticism. It is about approaching a pattern the way a skilled professional approaches a recurring problem, with curiosity and adjustment, rather than despair and resignation. There is also enormous value in observing how rejection affects your relationship with risk itself. Many people, after experiencing painful rejection, quietly stop trying altogether, protecting themselves from future disappointment by avoiding future attempts. This feels protective in the short term, yet it guarantees the exact outcome people fear most: a life diminished by avoidance rather than shaped by genuine effort. Growth requires continuing to put yourself forward, applying, connecting, creating, even after experiencing rejection, because avoiding all future rejection also means avoiding all future opportunity for the outcomes you actually want. This week, think of a rejection from your past, whether recent or long ago, that still carries some emotional weight. Instead of avoiding the memory, examine it honestly, using the steps in this chapter. Acknowledge the pain it caused without minimizing it. Extract whatever genuine lesson exists within your control. Look for what it may have redirected you toward, even if that redirection took time to become visible. Rejection will continue showing up throughout your life in various forms. This is unavoidable for anyone pursuing meaningful goals. What determines your growth is not whether rejection happens, it is what you choose to build from it every single time it does. Chapter 10. Live boldly as the high-value person you are. Everything you have built through this book so far has been leading to this exact moment. The moment where knowledge stops living in your head and starts showing up in how you actually walk through the world. You now understand that your worth was never tied to approval. You know how to build self-respect through daily action, rather than waiting to feel deserving of it. You have learned to stop chasing people who will not choose you, to walk away with dignity, to build habits that reflect your true value, to protect your peace through boundaries, to raise your standards, to quiet the need for constant validation, and to turn rejection into fuel instead of proof of failure. Now comes the part that requires the most courage of all, actually living this way, consistently, in the ordinary moments of everyday life, not just in theory. Living boldly does not mean living loudly. Many people confuse boldness with volume, assuming that a high-value life must look impressive from the outside, full of grand gestures and visible achievements. Real boldness is quieter than that and far more demanding. It shows up in the small, private decision to speak honestly instead of people-pleasing, even when honesty creates temporary discomfort. It shows up in choosing to walk away from something familiar and comfortable, simply because it no longer aligns with who you have become. It shows up in continuing to show up for your own standards on days when absolutely no one is watching, and no one would even notice if you quietly let them slip. Here is something crucial to understand as you move forward. Becoming a high-value person is not a single event you achieve and then coast on indefinitely. It is closer to physical fitness than to a diploma. A diploma once earned remains yours permanently regardless of what you do afterward. Fitness disappears the moment you stop showing up for it consistently. The same is true for everything covered throughout this book. Self-worth, boundaries, standards, emotional steadiness, these are not permanent trophies sitting on a shelf. They are living practices that require ongoing attention. This is not discouraging news. It is actually liberating, because it means every single day offers a fresh opportunity to reinforce who you are choosing to become, regardless of what happened yesterday. Let's talk honestly about what will test this new version of yourself, because pretending life will suddenly become easy would be dishonest. Old patterns do not disappear simply because you have read about better ones. There will be moments when an old craving for external approval creeps back in a moment of insecurity. There will be relationships that quietly attempt to pull you back into old dynamics, where you shrank yourself to keep the peace. There will be days when speaking up feels far riskier than staying silent, and walking away feels far scarier than staying comfortable in something familiar but limiting. These moments are not signs that your transformation failed. They are simply the ongoing terrain of a real, lived life. What matters is not the absence of these tests. It is how quickly you recognize them and how consistently you choose your new standard over the old habit. Living boldly requires a specific kind of comfort with being misunderstood. As you continue raising your standards, protecting your boundaries, and refusing to chase approval, some people around you will not understand this shift, and a few may even resist it directly. This is not a signal that something has gone wrong. It is often a signal that you are genuinely changing, because people who benefited from your previous patterns will naturally feel the loss of those patterns most acutely. You do not need everyone to understand your evolution. You simply need enough internal clarity to continue it regardless of outside commentary. Some relationships will adjust and grow alongside your new standards. Others will fall away entirely, and both outcomes are simply part of an honest, evolving life, rather than something to fear or prevent. There is also something worth addressing directly here, the temptation to use everything you have learned as a shield against genuine intimacy and connection. Living boldly and valuing yourself does not mean becoming emotionally unavailable, guarded or distant as a form of self-protection. True high-value living includes the willingness to remain open, to love fully, to invest genuinely in people and pursuits that matter, while still maintaining your own center. Boldness is not about building walls so thick that nothing painful can ever reach you again. It is about building a foundation so steady that even painful things, rejection, disappointment, loss, do not knock you completely off balance the way they once did. Consider what your daily life actually looks like when these principles become fully integrated, rather than simply understood intellectually. You wake up and move through your morning according to your own standards, not according to anxious reactions to notifications and other people's demands. You speak honestly in conversations, even when a slightly softer, people-pleasing version would feel more comfortable in the moment. You notice when resentment begins building in a relationship or obligation, and you address it directly, rather than letting it quietly poison the connection from underneath. You continue putting yourself forward toward goals and opportunities, fully aware that rejection remains possible, yet no longer terrified by that possibility the way you once were. None of this requires perfection. It requires consistent direction, a willingness to keep choosing growth, even after moments of falling back into old patterns. Here is a practice worth carrying forward long after finishing this book. At the end of each day, ask yourself one simple, honest question. Did I show up today as the person I am building myself to become? Or did I default back into old patterns of seeking approval, avoiding necessary boundaries, or shrinking myself to keep others comfortable? This is not meant as a tool for harsh self-judgment. It is meant as a compass, a way of gently, consistently checking your direction. Some days the answer will be yes, and you can acknowledge that honestly. Other days the answer will be no, and that is simply information, not condemnation, information that helps you adjust and try again tomorrow. Understand this clearly as you close this book and step forward into the rest of your life. Being high value was never about being unreachable, arrogant, or cold toward others. It was always about becoming someone whose sense of worth does not depend on constant external proof, someone who treats their own standards, boundaries, and peace as non-negotiable, and someone who continues showing up fully, honestly, and consistently, regardless of who notices or approves. This is not a destination you arrive at once and never think about again. It is a daily choice, repeated over and over, in ordinary moments that eventually accumulate into an extraordinary life. You already have everything required to live this way, starting today. Not someday, not once certain conditions finally align, but today, in whatever circumstances currently surround you. Carry forward what you have learned throughout every chapter of this book, not as information to remember, but as a way of being to practice, one honest day at a time. This is what it truly means to be expensive, to know your own worth so completely that begging for attention becomes something your past self used to do, while your present self simply lives, fully and boldly, exactly as you are.